The government has just announced a brand new tax for every single EV driver in the UK, and the media headlines say it could cost you thousands. But what the headlines might not be telling you is that this complete overhaul of EV taxation also contains several massive financial lifelines for EV drivers. And for some drivers, this budget could actually make buying an electric car cheaper. I'm going to break down the entire 2025 autumn budget, the good, the bad, and the frankly confusing, to show you exactly what this means for your wallet and how you can legally lower the bill. Well, for years we have enjoyed the perks of driving electric, zero road tax, government grants, and that smug satisfaction of cruising past petrol stations. Well, that era is officially drawing to a close. The Chancellor's just unveiled the most significant shake-up to electric vehicle running costs we've ever seen. And it affects everyone, whether you already own an EV, you're looking to buy one, or you're running a fleet for your business. We have two huge opposing forces at play here. See, on one hand, a new pay-per-mile road tax is coming, but not for another 3 years. While on the other hand, there are massive new incentives right now designed to soften the blow. So, is this a tax grab or a genuine attempt to balance the books while still offering massive encouragement for us to go electric? This is Dave Takes It On. I'm Dave, and I'll reveal all that is happening, allowing those who were thinking about switching to an EV to make the right choice. Well, let's get into the details, starting with the bad news, the bits that are going to hit your bank account the hardest. All right, I'm assuming you already know the bit that wasn't in the budget. This is vehicle excise duty, or what we used to call road tax. Previously, we EV drivers didn't pay any. Now, for new registrations, we get a break in the first year only. We only pay £10. Then forever after, pay exactly the same as every other car, EV, PHEV, petrol or diesel, £195 a year from the second year for new EVs. Those with an EV already on the road will see their next renewal leap to £195. No more freebies. Oh, by the way, older EVs first registered before 2017 will pay the lowest rate of £20. Yeah, watch out for a jump in price of the older EVs now. Well, all this was already in force well before the budget. So what did the budget bring us? Well, the headline news is the introduction of this new pay-per-mile tax, officially called Electric Vehicle Excise Duty, or EVED. Well, this is the government's answer to the multi-billion-pound hole that's forming in its finances as petrol and diesel car sales decline steeply, taking fuel duty revenue with it. Fuel duty currently means all ICE cars are already paying an effective per-mile duty, because the more miles you drive, the more fuel you buy. So EV is currently paying nothing per mile. So a driver covering 1,000 miles a year pays exactly the same vehicle excise duty or road tax as one doing 20,000 miles a year. So this new tax will start in April 2028. From that date, every electric car on the road will be charged for every mile it drives. So what will this cost you? Now, just a word of caution, this new EVED might never happen as the method for collecting it is not yet established, and there might not even be a method that works for everyone. But let's assume it will start. Now, 3p per mile might not sound like a lot, but this is where the shock comes in. A typical UK driver covers about 8,500 miles a year. So that new 3p per mile tax will cost you an extra £255 a year. If you're a higher mileage driver doing, say, 12,000 miles a year, you're looking at an annual bill of £360. And for road warriors covering more than 20,000 miles, yeah, it's going to be a whopping £600 a year that you previously didn't have to pay. And this, of course, is on top of, not instead of, the existing road tax. Well, over a typical 5-year ownership period, that's an extra £1,275 in tax for the average driver. And the 20,000 mile a year driver is looking at about a £3,000 stealth tax. Well, this completely changes the total cost of ownership calculation that so many of us use to justify switching to electric. The government itself expects this new tax to generate £1.1 billion in its very first year. So back to how will they collect this? You see, the plan is for a self-reporting system managed by the DVLA. When you pay your annual road tax, you'll have to estimate your mileage for the year ahead and then pay 3p per mile based on that figure. At the end of the year, you submit your actual mileage. How is yet to be determined, and the amount you paid over the year will be either credited or debited depending on how accurate your guess was. There is talk about this verification being taken during your MOT, but of course, new cars do not need an MOT for the first 3 years, which is the average length of a lease these days. So how will the government verify what you say matches what you pay? Because 30 million EVs, eventually, all needing to be verified equals about 100,000 individual checks each and every working day. Now, the government does point out that this is still roughly half the equivalent fuel duty paid by petrol and diesel drivers, framing it as a way to make all road users contribute to road maintenance. But let's be clear, the era of tax-free EV motoring, no road tax, no fuel duty and no pay per mile is well and truly over. But the direct cost isn't the only issue. The government's own independent forecaster, this is the Office for Budget Responsibility, has warned that this new pay per mile tax is likely to reduce demand for electric cars. Its analysis suggests the policy could lead to 440,000 fewer EV sales over that forecast period compared to previous predictions. So, of course, this sends a deeply mixed message. For years, the government has pushed us towards a 2030 deadline for petrol cars, aiming for a huge number of EVs on the road and a ban on the new petrol and diesel car sales. Now they're introducing a measure that, well, at worst, actively discourages or the very best, reduces demand temporarily for the very technology they've been promoting. Does that make any sense? Now, for those with plug-in hybrids, the 1.5 pence per mile proposed charge might seem like a small win, but it actually isn't. It adds another layer of complexity and also creates fairness questions. Why should a PHEV driver who meticulously charges their car and runs on electric all the time pay half the rate of a BEV driver doing exactly that? But it also means that by far the majority of PHEV drivers who never charge their batteries at all will now be paying 1.5p per mile on top of the fuel duty they're now having to pay. That would be 2 pay per mile taxes. Consultation how this will all work is still open, so many details yet to be ironed out, and many possibly don't even have an answer that works. The real agitation, however, comes from the psychological shift. The beautiful simplicity of EV running costs was a huge selling point. Now we're facing mileage estimates, annual reconciliations, and the nagging feeling that the 3p rate is just a starting point. The legislation states the rate will rise with inflation each year, so what starts as £255 a year could quite quickly ramp up to £300 or more in just a few years. Well, this is the problem, but I did say it might make buying an EV even cheaper. Well, let's talk about that solution, because the government is giving back with one hand while it takes with the other. Well, this is the part the headlines have largely ignored, probably because it is good news, so not clickbait at all. While the pay per mile tax is a blow, the budget also delivered 2 massive pieces of good news, especially if you are in the market for a new EV. So first, the luxury car tax, officially known as the expensive car supplement. Previously, any car with a list price over £40,000 was hit with a hefty annual surcharge for 5 years, starting in the second year. Well, this was huge, and it was previously a problem for EVs, as many small to family-sized models were already way past this point. The big news is that from April 2026, the government is raising this threshold specifically for electric vehicles from 40,000 to 50,000, and this is a terrific game changer, as many previously affected EVs now slot in comfortably. It's expected to save over 1 million motorists £440 a year. Price with a list price of £48,000 would have previously cost you an extra £2,200 in tax over 5 years. Now it costs you 0 extra. According to Auto Trader data, this change alone takes 51% of all new electric cars out of this tax bracket. So this is a direct saving that for many will more than offset the future few £100 pay per mile tax for several years. Second part of this solution is the huge investment in the electric car grant. This pays you a simple cash grant for those buying a new EV, the amount is depending on how green the manufacturer is. Government's just announced it is pumping an additional £1.3 billion into the scheme and extending it to the 2029-2030 financial year. So this brings the total funding pot to around £2 billion. That's 5 years, not the 3 for the start of the EVED. For those that don't know, this grant amounts to as much as $3,750 on eligible new electric cars. Well, since its launch in July 2025, the scheme has already helped over 35,000 drivers switch to electric. By extending this grant, the government is lowering the single biggest barrier to EV adoption, the upfront purchase price. Well, look, things are changing fast. So if you do want to stay ahead of the curve and get clear, no-nonsense breakdowns like this, make sure you subscribe. We do the digging so you can just get on with the driving. And the good news doesn't stop there. The budget also tackles another major concern for EV drivers: charging. An additional £200 million has been allocated to improve the UK's charging infrastructure, and the entire emphasis is aimed at helping local councils install more on-street charging points for those without a private driveway. Yes, the 30% of homes without off-street parking for charging at home might now get a huge boost. For businesses, the incentives are even stronger. The budget confirmed an extension of the 100% first-year allowance for both zero-emission cars and charge point infrastructure until 2027, which is a significant tax advantage. Furthermore, that media-created threat about CPOs, that's the charging networks, having to pay business rates on every single one of their charging bays, turns out to be totally made up. EV-only forecourts and all charge points will continue to benefit from 100% business rate relief for the next decade. This is a massive incentive for companies to build out the public charging network we all rely on, and doesn't stop there. For company car drivers, the news is amazingly positive. The incredibly low benefit in kind rates that make EV salary sacrifice schemes so attractive have been secured, ensuring it remains one of the most tax-efficient ways to drive a brand new car. Choosing an EV could see your monthly commitment fall to anything up to half that over choosing a petrol or hybrid car. You could maybe get a Porsche Taycan far cheaper than choosing a Nissan Qashqai or even a BMW 5 Series. So what does the 2025 budget really mean for your wallet? Well, it's a classic case of give and take. The 3p per mile EVD from April 2028 is a bitter pill to swallow. It ends tax-free motoring and adds a new ongoing cost. For an average driver, that's about £255 a year that you'll need to find. But I have to point out, it's not here yet and won't be for another 3 years and might actually never be. However, this is powerfully counterbalanced by some incredibly generous incentives. Raising the expensive car supplement threshold to £50,000 is a massive win, saving many buyers over £2,000 and allowing them to buy the EV they want rather than compromising for tax purposes. The extension electric car grant to early 2030, with its up to $3,750 discount, keeps the upfront cost of new EVs down, and continued investment in charging addresses a major practical headache, especially if you can't charge at home. Well, the government's strategy is clear. Sort of. They're slowly shifting the tax burden from buying a new or used EV car to using it. But of course, they're not scrapping or cutting the expensive 20% VAT applied to all new car sales. When doing so, they're creating a window of opportunity right now to get into an EV with maximum financial support before the pay-per-mile system kicks in. The message seems to be buy now to save later. While long-term running costs will rise, the immediate benefits for buying a new EV have never been stronger. 3 years of no pay-per-mile tax is a strong incentive. No expensive car tax on about half all EVs sold is even more so. But what do you think out there? Is this new paper mile tax fair, or is it a damaging blow to the UK's net zero ambitions? As always, let me know your comments and thoughts down below. I'm Dave.